Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu, and today I'm very happy to welcome Bo Bennett, and he is a social psychologist. He's an entrepreneur, business owner, author. He's also he does multiple things, but today is really interesting. He's been successful in business, sold his company for $20 million, 29 years old. He's a content, so does a lot of things. And I'm really happy to welcome individuals as accomplished as Bo onto the show. So welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We connected through Podmatch, and tell us about your story, background, how you got doing what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, you bet. Just a point of clarification. I'm now 51 years old. I sold my business when I was 29. I just don't want people to think, wow, that 29-year-old sounds really old. So my background, basically the exciting part of my background, business background, is after I graduated college, I never wanted to work for a company. My intent was never to get a job. It was always to create a job. And that's what really annoyed me with my college. I went to college back in 1990 to 94, my undergrad. And back then, at least at Bryant College, where I went in Rhode Island, the mindset was, you are here so you can get a good job, which really annoyed me. There was nothing about, hey, guess what? You can create a job. You could do tons of different things. You don't have to put on a suit and go to the office and get a job. So anyways, I never wanted to get a real job or a real job. I did nothing but work extremely hard. But what I did is after college, I just started a graphic design company. And that's how I got involved in the internet back in 1995, early 1995, when the internet was just making waves and people were just starting to find out about it. I was one of the first. And I thought, what an amazing tool for my graphic design business, where I could actually show my clients the designs like in real time. Because what I did before that is I'd have to FedEx it to them, like the full color design. It would cost like $20. They'd have to wait a day. They'd have to make the changes, get it back to me. And it was a crazy process, a pain in the neck. So I thought this internet thing is amazing. And I was kind of short-sighted there, because that's all I wanted to do was just for the graphic design. So to sum up the story a little bit, I ended up looking for a web hosting provider, somewhere where I could start a website, and there was nothing out there. It was crap. I mean, the people that were there they didn't know what they were doing. So I basically secluded myself to a room for 6 months. I learned everything I could about the internet, about programming the internet, like Perl language, and I started my own web hosting company. And it just took off. It was crazy how quickly it took off. I instantly sold the graphic design business, just focused on that. And then started an affiliate program, and it took off even more after that. Lots of interesting things happened along the way. But in 2001, I was offered $20 million for the company by Allegiance Telecom. They're no longer in business. And I accepted, because it was like right when the internet bubble was bursting. And I got out at a little bit late, because the company that bought me, Allegiance, they went bankrupt. So I didn't get the full payment, but I got most of it, which I was happy with. But really, if I waited another month, I would have had like a fraction of it. So the timing worked out well, but not perfect. And ever since then, I've been doing lots of different things, mostly all internet based. And I just love starting business and running companies.
Very interesting. And do you find any similarities between the internet, the bubble? It sounds like you really early adopter, got in early, timing pretty good, and now this whole wave with Bitcoin, blockchain, AI. I hate to use the word crypto, because crypto has a bad connotation, but for example, do you get a lot of you see a lot of similarities between those two?
Well, there's a few major turning points that I've seen in in business basically since I started. The first one was the first one actually was the introduction of the PC back when I was in 7th grade, and I had the Apple Lisa, I think it was. It started with that, and I mean that was obviously a game changer in business. And then came the internet back in '95. And then social media, like in 2010, and Facebook and Twitter, and that was another huge thing. I didn't jump aboard that bandwagon so quickly because I was so busy with other things, but I kind of saw that it was going to be big. And honestly, I never got the same vibe with crypto. I felt like I didn't see anything there, and maybe it's my short sight. Just my lack of knowledge about crypto and about everything involved in that, like NFTs, and I just didn't see it. So I won't say that it's not there. I'm just saying that I don't see it. But I will tell you that recently the AI explosion. I mean, this is crazy, crazy, crazy stuff, and it is going to be, in my opinion, bigger than the internet. I mean, of course, it builds on the internet. The internet is kind of the foundation where the AI lives and breathes, metaphorically speaking, of course, at least for now. But I think that AI is going to be, it already is huge. And I think it's going to get bigger and bigger. And I think anybody looking to jump aboard a new cash train, this is it. You just have to find the niche. You got to find how you can make money in this. And there are plenty of ways, but I bet with some creativity, people could find even more ways.
Yeah, it's fascinating, especially with ChatGPT. Like a podcast. I can crank it out as fast as almost like a social media post now. It's accelerated a lot of things. Really made things a lot easier. I love dating myself back then, and because I've seen basically innovation, and I love talking to successful individuals such as yourself. One thing is interesting is because you're a social psychologist, you got a PhD, and this idea of cognitive biases. I've been reading about that, and confirmation biases, and tell individuals your ideas and how they can help create alternate reality.
Yeah, sure. Well, cognitive biases, for those who don't know, are basically illusions of the mind. Like there are optical illusions when you're walking on a hot day and you see like it looks like a lake on the road, but it's not. You get closer and it disappears. Well, that's the heat evaporating and the bending of light waves and whatever it might be. You could ask a physicist for that. They'll give you a better answer. But when it comes to cognitive biases, it's essentially the same thing, but we're not talking about optical illusions. We're talking about mental illusions. We're talking about misperceptions of reality based on the way the mind works. And interestingly, cognitive biases aren't mistakes of the human mind. They're actually features. So they're not bugs, they're features. They're the way our minds work. Because you have to remember that evolution basically equipped us to survive and reproduce, and that's it. That's all evolution cares about, that we survive and reproduce, and that's the goal. So when it comes to getting things accurately, we need to know how not to die. We need to know to protect ourselves as much as possible. And the common example that's used is if our ancestors heard something in the grasses, they would automatically think the worst, and they would fear that it was like a lion or saber-toothed tiger, whatever there was back then, ready to pounce on them and get them. So they would act a lot of times prematurely and not rationally and be safe. And their ancestors, or our ancestors, the ones that didn't, the ones that said, the heck with it. It's realistically speaking, there's a 1 in 100 chance that it's something dangerous. They think rationally and realistically, well, they're going to die because over time, statistically, they're going to get the wrong side of the deal there. They're going to get eaten. They're not going to reproduce. So we are the offspring of our ancestors who thought correctly to survive, not thought correctly to reason in today's world. So back then, they didn't deal with the same kind of cognitive issues that we did, the same kind of political issues, the same kind of arguments, the same kind of debates. That just didn't exist back then. It was very simple, very basic. So we are not equipped, evolutionary speaking, to survive, well, not to survive, but to thrive in this kind of environment. And there's an interesting book, Fast and Slow Thinking, by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. And they talk about the difference between fast and slow thinking, system 1 and system 2, meaning one is slow and deliberate, and the other one is like instant. And that's where we are for survival. We think instantly. When we see something on the news, let's say we see a picture of our political opponent, like a fake picture of them soliciting a prostitute, right? Of course, it was faked, but it doesn't matter because we think quickly about it. It instantly attaches to our confirmation bias. We use our confirmation bias and we say, you know what, that's true. And if we see the opposite, if we see somebody that we like politically in that position, we'll say, you know what, that's false. We don't think slowly about it. We don't take that system 2 type of thinking and say, okay, what's the source of this image? Where did it come from? Why did I see it? What's the chances that it is true? And some random Twitter account got this picture and all the major news outlets didn't. You know, all these like questions that any like reasonable person would ask. When it comes to cognitive biases, we don't do it. We don't think reasonably. We just think fast. We think quick, and we're fine with that. We're limited to the cognitive processes. Cognitive energy is expensive. It takes a lot of energy to really process and think about everything. And in today's world and environment, we can't do that. We need to use heuristics. We need to kind of rely on our biases that get us to the wrong information many times, but that's the only way we could actually do it. So the answer to this, like what is the answer? What's the solution? Is when it comes to something, we need to activate that system 2, and we need to say, okay, let's think about this reasonably. Let's think about this rationally. Anytime we're engaged in debate, conversation, where the outcome is really important, we need to slow down, we need to step back, and we need to put our cognitive biases aside, not think quickly, but rationally, and figure things out. So cognitive biases, they're there, they've always been there, but we need to work around them, and we could work around them. We just need to do it, and it takes energy. Lazy people don't do it. But smart people who are interested in the truth, they do it.
Yeah. What's interesting is because you know, the way I've been thinking, because I saw this the MIT commencement address from he was a YouTuber. It was this year, and he's talking about confirmation bias, and he's talking about how you can use that to actually activate the law of attraction, which was really interesting. You filter out what you pay attention to, what you assign meaning to, and it's almost like you're actually creating your own reality, which you're talking about,
Right.
which is fascinating. Why is it so important to get comfortable with these uncomfortable ideas, and you know, we'll get into how you apply this to, you know, authorship and other realms that you're doing.
Yeah, well, it's related, obviously, to cognitive biases. There are a lot of ideas that are uncomfortable to us. They're uncomfortable to us politically, religiously, socially, for many different reasons, because we don't like them. We don't like to think about it. We don't like the potential outcomes, but sometimes we need to. And you mentioned that commencement speaker, which was interesting, and how cognitive biases could actually help us sometimes, and that's true. Not like creating our own reality could actually help us. And that is true. Like you can create your own reality, and you could pretend like you are confident. You could pretend that you're well-adjusted. You could create this reality where you're like a superhero, and you could act that way. And in that sense, acting that way makes you become that. So you could see where this kind of mindset psychologically could work and could benefit people. It's kind of like self-confidence, believing in yourself, looking at your positive aspects. However, there is a part where it can conflict with reality. Like, for example, if you think you're a really good-looking guy who could get any girl they want, but you're not, no matter how much, well, I say no matter how much you think it, but confidence is very attractive in people, and people like confidence, but only up to a certain point. There's going to be a point where it's just not going to work for you. And that's where kind of like reality comes in and gets in the way. Or like if you think you're rich and you're spending money like you're rich, but you don't have the money, it doesn't work that way. You need to be part of reality there. So there's definitely those intersections, we could call them. Uncomfortable ideas are again, just to quickly define, it's basically an idea, a concept, a fact of life that makes us uncomfortable to talk about or to think about. My book is filled with them. And they're very controversial too, because again, they're uncomfortable. So the best thing that I could do is possibly just ignore them. But sometimes you can't. One of the examples that I use that's kind of a fun one, but also could be a little bit controversial, is when there's a bunch of them, but the one I want to talk about, I guess, is the one where Ellen. Do you remember the host, Ellen DeGeneres of the Ellen Show?
Yeah.
A few years back, she's a comedian. She's very funny. She's very lighthearted, lovable. She photoshopped a picture of her on the back of Usain Bolt, like the fastest man in the world, like sprinting. And she said something funny like, "I could be faster," or "I won the world record," or something like that. But it was a complete, like, total innocent joke. But so many people attacked her for racism. Like, "Oh, look at you using the black man as like a slave," bringing it back to slavery. And you think like, wait, what the heck? And she was completely thrown off. A lot of people were like, what's going on here? And this is a way where people kind of create this like racism where it doesn't exist. And people do that nowadays. You create racism, you create sexism, you create all of these problems where they don't actually exist. And they do exist after you create them by pointing it out and whether there was no intention. So a lot of times when people think that they're doing the right thing by being the keyboard warrior, the social justice warrior, whatever you want to call them, they're not. They're actually creating the problem. They're making it worse. They're bringing up something where it didn't exist before. So people need to know that from like a social psychological perspective, what is going on. And a lot of times, like, that is an uncomfortable idea because you think you're doing the right thing, but you're not. And you, the person who's trying to fight racism, to fight sexism, you're actually doing the opposite. So you could see there where not being aware of this could just keep on allowing the problem to get worse. But if you are aware of what's going on, then you could change your behavior and you can make things better.
Yeah, I love that. It's so interesting. And I love, just questioning your assumptions and kind of taking the opposite side helps you to, be more open-minded. Really interesting. And I know a lot of people, I know you do comedy, you're an author. How can people check you out, follow you on your social media accounts?
Sure. Well, I'm not a huge social media user. I do have a Facebook account, but you could find me at bobennett.com. That's just my domain name. You can find all my books there, everything I do. And also, if you go to Squat, that goes directly to my YouTube channel where I created a sitcom. That's what I've been working on now. I've got 2 more episodes to animate, and hopefully that'll be done within a couple of weeks. Really excited about that. And that's where I get to kind of release all my humor. But every single one of those sitcom episodes has like what we've been talking about. They have uncomfortable ideas in there. The underlying theme of all of this is critical thinking. And you could see how the characters portray that. So there's a lot of learning in there, but it's all hidden by humor, by lighthearted humor. So definitely check that out if you're interested in that.
Yeah, I love that. I love talking with people that have come from different industries, especially the early days of the internet, and just talking innovation and these how to question our assumptions and thinking and change society for better. So with that, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.